Ladies, on March 27th at the Golden Gate Club in San Francisco, I invite you to join a room of trailblazers, executives, entrepreneurs, and visionaries who are rewriting the rules of money. Hear from real women who've built wealth through real estate investments, scaling businesses, and creative financial strategies. And learn from industry leaders who have walked the path you're on and who are ready to share their playbooks. You'll engage in intimate panels, fireside conversations, and curated peer-to-peer matchmaking designed to spark meaningful connections. Leave with our wealth creation toolkit packed with actionable resources to help you prioritize your goals and take immediate steps towards financial independence. Now, your journey doesn't end when the day is over. Each of you will be invited to join our online Catalyst community, where you'll be guided through more educational opportunities and times to be able to connect with each other over the course of the next few months. Wealth creation is about opportunity and community. Now, early bird tickets are $9.99 through February 27th. Don't wait. This is your moment to build confidence, community, and wealth. Apply now at women.win and use the code SHAMA25, that's SYAMA25, to get a 25% discount off the early bird price. The Women in Wealth Catalyst Summit, ladies. It's time to redefine wealth and redefine your future.
Welcome to Getting Rich Together, the show for successful women who are looking to take their financial futures to the next level. I'm your host, Shama Bunton. When I started my wealth building journey, nobody knocked on my door to give me all the answers. So I want to talk to the experts who've done it and bring the answers to you so we can discover the right opportunities that will help us achieve the financial futures we've always dreamed of together and have fun doing it. So let's dive into this episode and start getting rich together. I am here today with the beautiful and brilliant Alyssa Arnold. Alyssa, most women who are listening to this show will know you as a catalyst of getting women to invest in opportunities to participate through special purpose vehicles, through meeting founders, and someone who's also extremely generous and compassionate. So you definitely have a bright aura around you when it comes to women and money and investing, which is not something you can say about everybody. But I'm excited to have you here today. I'm excited to jump into your interesting history and past and the future that you're creating. Thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I don't do podcasts often, so I was really excited to be invited and to be able to have time to do this.
Wonderful. Well, Alyssa, taking a few minutes away from your busy life as, running companies and being a super mom, I'm grateful for the moments that you can share to really help everyone understand and see that, man, we've all got our own journey and we're all sort of on our own path. And your path is just as interesting and different, I think, as every woman I've spoken to. And so let's start with the beginning. My darling Alyssa, you were once a 5-year-old, a 10-year-old. You were once a little girl who maybe didn't know that she wanted to have a family office and run the world, or maybe she did. I don't know. You tell me, what was life like for you as a young girl? Where did you grow up? And most importantly, what were some of the money stories or things around you when you were growing up?
I grew up in Houston, Texas. I was born and raised here. When I was born, the year I was born, my father started an environmental engineering company in Houston on the back of the Exxon Valdez spill. I don't know if you remember Exxon Valdez, the huge giant. There was regulations that were created to protect against, those types of issues happening. He started a consulting firm the year I was born, building out those plans and really leveraging that regulation was really early in that. And so my childhood was wrapped around spending nights at the offices while he was, building his business. And my mom was his HR and accounting. And I remember them working tirelessly, but also making themselves available to me. And I think that very much is an imprint on who I am today. And he came from a family where his dad hustled to always, chase after the American dream. They were from small town in Missouri. He was the first college graduate. And so he's definitely the reason why I'm here today. He's been the accelerator to my journey. I remember growing up and saying, I'm going to be an engineer. I'm going to work on engines because that's what my dad did. I thought engines. I thought those were the same things. And I went to college to be a civil engineer and practice engineering and still practice engineering today and love it. But I found, such a huge passion in the strategy of businesses and the development and the road mapping and really like seeing how the cross functions work together. And that kind of became what I realized was my superpower.
That's so fascinating. It's so cool to be able to be like, hey, I thought I was going to do this when I was little. And then look, mom, look, I did it. And so you're also extremely entrepreneurial and so self-directed. Did you have any idea about that when you were, let's say, in middle school or high school? What were you like as a young girl sort of navigating, let's say, independence or like wanting to do things with your friends? How did you approach it?
I think I was like all teenagers. I was a really, really good kid. And then I hit like 15, 16, got a bad boyfriend and did the whole, 16-year-old thing. And then I went to college and I really pictured having like a job in engineering, whether it was land development or energy sector or whatever, back, local to Houston. I graduated in 3.5 years from civil engineering and popped out, started working for an energy firm and was on the path to corporate success. I worked in there for 6 years. It wasn't until I had my oldest son or my son, I'm a mom of 4, so I have 1 boy and 3 girls. So it wasn't until I had my son 8 years ago that I started exploring entrepreneurship. I don't think it was really part of my path, or even with my dad having done it. I think because he had done it, I had seen it and been like, oh, I want to do that. Like, that's how it works. But when my son was born, I really had this desire to be able to stay home and work alongside him and have this more flexible life that I had seen my parents have, be able to go to our soccer game and then work in the evenings and things like that. And so that is really what the impetus was to starting my own business. And then after that, it was a drug I couldn't turn off.
Oh my gosh. And so when you were in university and you were sort of preparing yourself, were you one of those students who was like, I'm going to be heads down in my studies? Did you have a part-time job? Were you like, I'm going to go explore the world? What kind of university student were you?
I was the dorkiest. I was president of the American Society of Civil Engineers. I had a part-time job in an engineering firm.
Oh my gosh, Alyssa.
Graduated in 3.5, so obviously took like way too
all the classes.
It wasn't until I got out of college and I didn't really drink or party much in college either. I was heads down. I was a very driven person. And I think once I was able to get that job and that validation that like I could be an adult, and I actually met my husband. He worked at my first job. And so I met my husband then, and it was really like when he and I started dating that I ended up like trying out the bar scene and like really began to have fun. So like I always laugh because he's 6 years older than me and he had a lot of fun before me. But I always laugh because like you were the start of like really me being an enjoyable, fun person and not just this like super driven human. But I think I like had a point to prove. I'm the third child. So my brother and sister were ahead of me and they both had engineering degrees and had great jobs. So I think I had something that I had to prove. And like, once I had that validation, I was able to like enjoy life for a minute. So if there's any regrets I have, I don't think I enjoyed like high school and college to the degree that others might have, i.e. my husband. But
it came to you. It happened.
It did. It's just, because he was older than me, we ended up having our first kid when I was 26. So I only got like 4 years of it. But I at least got the 4 years of really having fun.
That's so amazing. And so, Alyssa, you mentioned sort of having this part-time job at this engineering firm. Obviously starting to earn money and have money is really empowering. And so as you were earning money, these first initial checks, was the inclination to save money? Was the inclination to invest it? Were you like, I'm liberated and have my own money. I'm now going to go spend it on the things that I want. How did you start to think about your money at a young age?
Yeah, I don't think I really understood investing and like how impactful it can be and how it could double in 7 years in the market and like all of these things. So for me, I was just seeing the bank account grow was like really exciting. And really, I think the biggest thing I got out of that was like the experience around the job. And that's what landed me the bigger jobs that I, eventually got and things like that. So I knew that the money was great, but I knew that the experience was going to put me in a position where I would get 10 times that, in a full-time role and position. And so that was really the reason for the job, not necessarily just to put cash in the bank, but it was really to garner that experience to be able to make my transition from university to a full-time role even better. Yeah.
That's incredible. And so you're so strategic. It's like how we were talking before this podcast about like looking at contracts and like legal stuff. Like you're specific, and it's such a wonderful quality, and I appreciate it. And I'm grateful to have you as a friend who has that sort of lens and an eye on things. Did you also apply that, as you were looking at sort of navigating early corporate life? Were you into negotiating your salaries? Was it, how do I sort of take advantage of all the opportunities like 401ks? How conscious were you of sort of the money components of building a successful career, given that you were really specific and strategic about what you needed to sort of get into these different brackets of earnership, right? Or sort of guarantee those outcomes?
So I don't think I ever really negotiated my salary. I came out and it was a really strong offer. It was like, even my brother and sister who were in their corporate careers were like, holy crap. So that, all the tracks I laid, president of ASC, like all the things I did, like really were able to catapult me to the position where I was really excited with it. So I never had to negotiate that, but definitely maxed out 401k. I'm always have been and always will be a saver. And for me, it was just building that nest egg because in the energy sector, there is a lot of ups and downs. And so we've really learned to never expect the next paycheck and always to be very strategic with the money you do have. And so I learned that at a young age because we watched a lot of layoffs. We watched a lot of like hiring increases. And so we just watched such a roller coaster of a sector because it's commodity based. I think that taught me the value of money more than anything. And so it was never about negotiating your salary. It was like making sure you stayed employed at the high salary you currently had. So I think it was always fighting for your role. And the other thing that I was really strategic about in those first 6 years was getting experience in a lot of places because I knew the experience is what was going to get me that next role and that next place. And so that was pretty important to me as well.
That's so fascinating. And also like having this understanding of building the nest egg and volatility, that's not something that a lot of most young people don't really consider that, right? And it's more like, I can always get a job and I'm going to keep building. And so how has, from an allocation standpoint, when you guys were young and you're sort of building, was it, mostly savings account, stock market and 401k, or, at what point did you buy your first home? What did safety mean? Like where did the nest egg live? How did you think about that?
To be fair, whenever we first got married, my husband already owned a condo. So he owned, a nice apartment in a high rise that we lived in for a good while. And we were able to save a lot over that time. That dink life, dual income, no kids, was killing me. Definitely miss those days. But we then very quickly started looking for a house. At that time, it wasn't so ridiculously expensive to get a house, and it did make a ton of sense to, buy that real estate. Yeah, so I think it was like 2 or 3 years in, we ended up buying our first home. That was it was a 5-bedroom home. We're in Texas though, so it's cheap compared to your real estate. And started laying down kind of those roots, knowing that was an asset that should gain value over time. Ours actually lost value because we sold it at the wrong time. And that was kind of the mindset. But we didn't do much beyond that. And again, until I quit and had my son, and then we started buying different cash flowing assets and real estate holdings and things like that. But we didn't do much beyond the 401k, pushing to the money management kind of company until I had, I think, freedom of thought and like wasn't just in this corporate circle where I thought those were the only ways to only places to put your money.
It's so interesting. I think that this aha moment that you had is, we all sort of, I think if we're lucky, we get to have that at different times in our life, or like the eyes go open and you're like, holy bananas, like I can do so much more than what I've been told I can do. And this is like not only interesting, but fun and exciting. And so, it sounds like real estate holdings and starting to branch that out was one of the first areas you went into. How did you even get access to that information, or even like find out that like, oh, I can start building, even if it's a small real estate portfolio, I can start doing that? What were some of the things that allowed you to have access to that?
I think I was having conversations with coworkers. I think there was like peer groups that we were talking to. And again, like when you're in groups with people that are making money and they have a diversity of thought of where they're invested in things like that, and if they're comfortable enough with sharing it, I think that's really helpful. And we evaluated assets, and I do M&A. I've done M&A work since day one of my first job. So I picked up those skills through a lot of my career. And so it was pretty easy for us to apply, obviously at a significantly smaller level than the M&As that I currently do. It was a pretty easy application of that knowledge base. And then we were able to build comfort around it because it was something that we knew and we could validate ourselves. Not saying we didn't make plenty of stupid mistakes, but we were able to make small enough stupid mistakes that they didn't, wreck the boat. And we did it very intentionally, wanting to learn. And I say we because my husband and I do all of it together and are thoughtful about all the things together. I think it's been a cornerstone of our marriage. Yeah. So I think it's just, little bits over time, giving things a try. And then once people know, hey, they're an investor in this, or hey, they do this, that network just starts to grow over and over, especially if you do right by the projects and you just continue to take the meetings and have the conversations. I think that's the key. And it's diversity of deal flow is, we were talking about before, like, I wish I had more real estate. I wish I had more cash flowing businesses. I wish I had, more diversity of deal flow in multiple sectors, because I think being able to see a multitude of deals is the key to be able to pick the ones that you think is the true gem. If you're only looking at 4 or 5, it's hard for you to really be able to see like what the metrics are of success or what the KPIs are that you really want to, invest in. When you're seeing 100, it's easier to kind of compare and contrast and let the ones that you think are the real winners float to the top.
I think that's such a great sage piece of advice. I mean, both in terms of just building network and exercising the muscle, it's like you need to have the conversations. I remember the very first time you and I got to hang out on a Zoom, and it's like, you start investing in relationships to get access to not only people you like, but then also like deal flow and opportunities. And at the end of the day, people will share opportunities if they like you. And like, it really comes down to networks and how we build that. And then also, this idea of sort of making small mistakes that help you sort of save money and time in the long run. I think sometimes when it comes to investing, someone will make a mistake and then they'll internalize that as shame, blame, and guilt. And then there's a fear to lose money or to take risk again. And ultimately investing is not every single deal is a winner. It's that you hope that the ones that are a winner really eclipse any of the losses that you might sustain over time. And I think that's also a really valuable point. Alyssa, what's so exciting is you went from this like incredible, this like corporate, very stable career, and then you take this big left turn and you're like basically in the realm of the wild, wild west, which is very different from corporate safetiness, right? And so as you sort of started to think about, what your impact could be in these different ways, how did you start to balance or navigate the safetiness and the risk? How did you start to think about that from like, let's say, an emotional standpoint, a physical standpoint, it can be anxiety producing to write that first check and be like, poof, it's gone. How did you start to navigate that?
So let me, I guess, take a step back and walk through a little bit more of the history there. So, left my corporate job, stayed home with my son, launched our engineering firm and strategy consulting firm just through peers and network, just saying, hey, can you help with this project or that project? No intention of it when I left the job. I was planning on being a stay-at-home mom and just started getting the work, slowly knocking it down, and then realizing there's a really big market here. So I did that for 2 years before my husband left his job to come support the firm because it had gotten to a point where it was just too big. I couldn't do it all. He obviously was in the same industry as me. And so I needed that support. Once he did that, that's when kind of gloves came off and it was all hands on deck and really going after this business and growing it.
Which is also terrifying, right? Because now both of you guys are
the first 2 years wasn't risk. We had health insurance, we had his salary, it was all calculated risk, but then it just kind of peaked to a point where it was like, this opportunity is too big for me to sit idly by. And I can make more money than you can alone. And I can't do all of this alone. So let's do this. And there was some independence pieces. We didn't want to live in the town that we were living in. We wanted to live closer to my family. And we wanted certain things in our life and felt like that risk, was worth it. So that risk was worth it. We ended up doing really well. Even through COVID, the business accelerated quickly and is still doing what it needs to do and providing, enough income for us to continue to validate running the business versus going back to full-time jobs. But in that, we started having a lot of cash flow. And it was at a point where I really believed in female businesses. I still do, obviously. I really believed in female businesses. I loved to understand and see the consumer intersection with social media and all the changes that were going on there. And quickly wanted to get involved in venture consumer startups. I just was fascinated by how these brands were growing and, what they were capable of doing and having an impact on every family in the US was just fascinating to me. So I, had been doing M&A work and, my father's an investor. So I had been an investor in other deals, not my own money. But I was able to kind of use kind of the due diligence and all of the practices that we had been working on over 10 years at that point to apply to, these venture deals. So I invested in a VC, and I think my centralized story here. That was my big risk. That was my big mistake. That was my big failure. But it got us to where we were today. That VC ended up not being the right place for our money and not the right alignment for me personally. But through that, I was able to meet people and get access to this venture world. And there is where we started writing our first checks to individual businesses, and it was scary as hell. But you have to write the checks. You got to be in the networks to be able to get more.
Do you remember your first check? So okay, I'm right here with you. Writing the first check. What was it like?
It was really stressful because it was on the back of some issues that had been occurring with the previous aforementioned VC I had invested in. And there was some crazy shit that happened. And I did what I thought was the right thing to do at the time. It was probably more money than I would have done. It was faster than I would have done it. But, I felt pretty passionate on doing right by the founder in question. And it's been a great investment for us. And again, I still probably wouldn't have done as much. And I think that was my biggest failure in my first year of angel investing was I was putting out too much cash into not enough businesses. And I wasn't diversifying fully, which, you and I were talking about. That's the key to the success of the venture, especially the venture front is diversification. It was scary. It was a big leap, both for my husband and I, because we were so used to putting money into businesses that were on the public stock exchange and fully regulated and, fully vetted out. And, here we pivoted and put it into $2 million revenue businesses that were, in high growth mode. And it was huge risk and it was quite a course correction. I don't know if I would suggest anyone go as strong into it as we did, but that's kind of how I do things and that's how I learn. So, through that, we've had so many opportunities. By doing right by that founder, we've had so many opportunities and we've been put in a place to have that diversity of deal flow.
Tell me more about the diversity of deal flow. So when you're sort of, now you've been investing for quite a few years, you've built a lot of networks and relationships and, have just, the most incredible Rolodex of people and investors. But as you're looking at sort of your own asset allocation and diversification within this venture space, like how, or just in general in diversification, can you tell me more about what that means to you? What do the sectors look like, or how do you sort of think about that in your mind?
I spent some time really studying and understanding how venture funds were built and fund construction. And I felt like if I was going to do this, I needed to study and use them as case studies as to how to do and build a diverse micro fund is what I call it. So it's our micro fund for myself based off of what has been successful for these prolific venture firms in the past. And so I really look at all of the investments as a fund investing, right? So inside a fund, not every company has to win, but there needs to be some really big winners, some in the middle winners to offset the losers. And so that also helps me contextualize the risk that I'm taking, because not all of my eggs are going into one basket. My eggs are going into all of these different baskets. And so that also helps me swallow some of the risk as well. But my goal is, if I'm going to put out $100,000 this year, it's going to be in 10 companies. I'm going to diversify enough that if 3 fail and 3 do well and 3 do okay, we're at least returning the fund. So it's always a return the fund mentality. So I want to, and in true venture and true like technology and kind of like traditional venture, they run the econs behind each and every deal that they do to ensure that that one deal could return the entire fund. So if they're investing $1 million and it's a $20 million fund, they want to know it has a 20x realistic return and it could return the whole breadth of the fund. I do that to some degree, but I'm in a lot of consumer deals. So I think there's like some downside protection there as well. But I really have approached this as, how does this fit inside our thesis? And how does this fit inside our micro fund that we are currently investing out of? Versus how I originally started, which is like, I like this deal and I like this one and this one looks good. And so I'm very intentional. Like if I feel like, I've been talking a lot about butt health. Like if I feel like butt health is the next, business, like I'm out looking for butt health companies. I'm doing everything I can to find them. I'm reaching out to companies in some cases, and I'm looking for that specific subset or sector that I think is going to be really interesting and could have high growth, and trying to find the right company in that sector that I feel aligned with on their metrics and all of their details.
I love this so much, Alyssa. These are such words of wisdom as far as how you approach it. So your thesis, is it something that you look at every year to sort of think about what's the focus for this next year? Is it over a timeline horizon? How are you sort of looking at what the mandate or what the thesis is for you? How do you decide?
There's a couple of things I think is really important when you're building a thesis. It's figuring out what you absolutely do not want to invest in first. So if it's, size fashion, if it's food, if it's alcohol, like whatever it is, like get those out of the way first and foremost. Do your research, understand the M&A, understand the opportunity, how it aligns to you personally. The beauty of a micro fund or angel fund is it can align to your own personal desires as well. So for me, like, I'm not really interested in, I think I saw like a weight loss drug. I'm not really interested in like the drug sector or the weight loss movement and things like that. I know that's a big industry. I just not interested in it. So like for me, that's like out of my thesis. And that's really easy for me to connect on off. When it comes to like me doing the refresh, it's usually in January and July that I kind of do this deep dive of understanding like what is popular. What are the deals I'm seeing a lot of? Obviously AI was huge. I think there was, NFTs was the thing before that was really big. And like, I decided very early, like, I don't understand NFTs. I can't invest in this. And for AI, I had decided I have these experts that I trust that do AI. The only way I'll invest in it is if it comes through someone like that. Right. Mm-hmm. So like, I tranche out all of these different like requirements And I usually use a lot of my network to kind of vet out a lot of the thesis that I'm building out. But it is a continuously changing thesis to your point. Like it does have to be dynamic and move. And I think the biggest portion of the thesis is the amount of deals I want to be able to do with the amount of money, and really giving myself a budget and being very intentional at how much money I'm spending on what deals at what stages. So it's just, and it's also experience. I think you start learning very quickly.
It's also the way you think, because I have to tell you, like, I'm learning a lot. I'm like, okay, I need to sit down and get a lot more clear about certain parameters. And so I think that a lot of it's experience, but it's also like some of us think in these particular ways. And I think that that's something that is, whether that's from how you've seen your family invest, your engineering background, or just really the way that you were just beautifully born on the planet to sort of think like this. It's a real gift to be able to also be patient, because a big part of this is, I'm not going to just put money into the first thing I see. I'm actually going to hold.
But I totally made that mistake. So, you can say it's my beautiful mind. It's not. It's like really having been burned and doing things the wrong way for a while, and like living with that. I wouldn't call it regret, but that like, I wish I would have like done this differently. And I think like by learning that way, it teaches you so much. But I didn't have platforms like, and I'm going to name drop here, but platforms like Cherub, which is one of the reasons why, we'll get to it. But one of the reasons why I, wanted to do an acquisition or be acquired by them was, if I would have had that from day one, I would have made such different decisions. I wouldn't be where I am today and things like that.
Sure.
But I would have taken so much better measured risk. At the time, I had to be putting out those big dollars to like build the deal flow. I had to be putting out those bigger dollars to have
some muscle. Yep.
Yeah. And I wish I wouldn't have, right? I wish I'm invested in like 50 deals right now, or 50 brands right now, but I could have been invested in like 100 for the amount that I've put out. So it's things like that maybe I wouldn't have, done it the right way had I had the access. But in order to get the access, I had to make.
Gotta go in. Yeah, you gotta go in.
You gotta build a name for yourself and validate who you are. I don't know if you have to do that anymore. I don't know. I don't know if it's experience or like, really measured success, but it definitely was after I put out that money that I was like, I gotta stop. This is not something like I know how to do, and I gotta go study people who know how to do this. And so I had the luck to be able to meet with some of these VC firms and like really pick their brain on how they've built it and be thoughtful about how they're approaching deals and what the lenses are. And that really was where I kind of kicked into like, I'm going to build my own micro fund. I'm going to be intentional about what we do. And I'm going to be, really thoughtful with diversifying.
That's so amazing. And so this parlays nicely into Pearl Influential and, what you're building, what you were building. And obviously you spilled the tea already with an acquisition. But can you sort of, with Pearl, what was different about that is you're sort of investing into your own deal flow, but then all of a sudden you said, I'm now going to open this up and share sort of what I'm getting access to and what I think is good to a much larger audience. And through that vehicle, you built just an incredible Rolodex of investors and people who are interested in participating in these deals. And so can you unpack for me the confidence around going from solo investor to like, now I'm going to really like bring people along for the journey, and what it was like to start to now lead and educate and help other investors get into the space of investing?
I mean, I think it's like every other founder, I had the problem myself, right? Like if I would have had someone that was feeding me these SPVs from the beginning, I wouldn't have faltered the way I did, right? And I wouldn't have had to stub my toe and learn how to safe note was on my own and go and do all of this on my own. And I wanted to be able to solve for that problem. I started getting this diversity deal flow that I'd worked so freaking hard for and I put so much money out for. I was like, I don't want other women to have to do that. Like the goal is to bring them the deals, to fractionalize the investment opportunities so they can do these 5K checks versus these 100K checks. They can partake in it and learn and be able to dip their toe in versus having to dunk their head in. and hopefully teach them how to diversify and, give themselves this micro fund and be successful in venture. And I saw such an issue back in 2022. All we heard about was only 2% of females getting, venture funding. And I really believe that it's not that we have, a lack of amazing women to invest in, or even a lack of GPs that were interested in investing. We have too few LPs fueling and funding those GPs to invest in the women. And it needed to be women, right? So I always say men are going to want to invest in men products. That's what they align with. They understand those problems there. Or it's the deep tech and things like men, they have a type. They like to invest in what they enjoy, reading about and doing. And women are going to be supportive of investing in women businesses. And so I just felt like there wasn't enough female LPs in the fund circles, but it also is really hard to go invest in a VC fund. I'm proof of it. Until you know the right questions to ask and you know what to look for. And women are risk adverse. And so for me, the best way to bring the LP, market to the venture funds was to give them a playground to learn in and be able to dip their toe in and start making money that they then wanted to go invest in a fund because they believed in the venture life cycle. So yeah, we started.
It's really incredible. And can you unpack for our listeners the difference between a GP and an LP?
GP is who runs the fund. It's the general partner. So they run the venture funds and then they make all the decisions. And a venture fund is blind. So as an LP, a limited partner, I am an investor in the fund and I'm putting money into this pool of money that the general partner then goes and allocates to different businesses. They diversify, usually the fund across 20 to 50 companies, somewhere in there. And me as the limited partner is just investing the money and I don't have any right in the decision-making process. So you have to really trust your general partner to make the right decisions and to be great advocates for your money. And I think in order to make those decisions, one, you need diversity of funds to look into. So that's, you'll see later, that's a product I'm really passionate about bringing, is being able to give access to all the different funds in the world so that it's not just the person you're talking to on the plane or, the one fund manager you met. So you can really compare and contrast. And two, being educated enough to know how you align to the thesis and the companies that fund's investing into.
I love that. And so as you started, building this muscle and, it's so incredible as you get to be such an example of an entrepreneurial mom, it's you've been able to build an incredible family and be able to sort of navigate running a business and then also running Pearl and starting to push out sort of SPVs. And so what's fascinating, Alyssa, is you look well rested and you look beautiful today. And yet I have this feeling that you're quite extended in your life, especially because you have so many young children. As you've been sort of navigating, Pearl and what it was that you wanted to build with it and sort of the outcomes from it, and the number of deals you gave exposure to. Were there any sort of things that you learned from this process around working with female founders or working with, getting women to invest for the first time? I think one of the things that I'm so passionate about with just women in investing in general, women in finance is, we need to be able to learn how to build the muscle. We need the on-ramps. And so what were some of the things that you were able to really garner from that experience?
Yeah, I think access to the founder and pitch events was really important. If I could bring an investor onto a pitch event and let them hear how I ask questions and really process through that pitch and things like that, that was really important to them being able to be, one, comfortable to ask their own questions, and two, to start understanding how to think and position the opportunity. I also learned that I was incapable of bringing enough deals to, we had amassed about 1,000 investors, or at least interested investors. I think we onboarded 200 new investors to deals, but I wasn't able to bring the full diversity of what everyone wanted to see. I wasn't, like I said, I wasn't doing weight loss drugs, and I wasn't doing cannabis, and I wasn't doing NFTs, and I wasn't doing all these things that people had interest in. So I quickly learned that there was a diversity of deal flow that was even beyond me, that this network wanted and was interested in. And I also learned people are really passionate about investing in things they're passionate about. So like Partake, we did a deal for, I actually have them sitting here, did a deal for Partake cookies, or Partake Foods, and they do allergen-free cookies. And the amount of investors we had that personal issue, their children had allergies and they weren't able to eat the cookies, and they were so passionate about this, was very interesting. So we could find investments people could align to. We saw really, really big opportunities, which in return was great for the brand, because now they have these super consumers that are investors in the brand who also like really were passionate about the brand and the mission of the brand. And so finding those alignments was really special for us. And so that, that was a huge learning for me too, that women really wanted to invest in like their own problems and their own needs and their own passions. And so the more deals that we could find aligned with the greater group, the better.
That's so exciting. And so tell me about some of the dominoes that fell that led to an acquisition. That is, an acquisition is something that I think most people dream about being able to say that they went through an acquisition. And knowing you, lots of legal work to sort of sift through and make sure that it's aligned. But nonetheless, something that feels good to say, I built this thing, I got out of it, X, Y, and Z, and now I'm ready for the next thing. And I want this to be something different for myself. What were some of the thought processes that went down? How did you decide, or what was sort of the impetus for who you ended up selling the business to, right? And how are you sort of seeing, I guess, the future of this acquisition? What's ahead? So spill all of it.
Yeah, I think there's like two reasons you get acquired. Well, I guess three. One, you're in trouble. That wasn't us, luckily. Two, you see a huge monetization opportunity. That wasn't us. Three, you see a huge opportunity to accelerate your mission and align with a greater team that can really push forward and make something much bigger and much greater. And it was definitely the latter for us. Pro was wonderful, and I loved every minute of it. It serviced the need that I had, which was to bring deal flow to women. We would monetize through a carry on each deal. So we would earn in some equity on each deal that we did. So it became, the time that I spent towards Pro really became one of my capitals to invest. So by doing these deals, I was getting these extra equity pieces, and I loved it. But like I said, I felt like we weren't bringing the full diversity of deal flow that I was really excited to bring to these people. And every investment, every SPV we did, I personally invested in. And so I was also just limited by how many investments I wanted to make. And I felt like it was important for me to be just an investor and not just pumping out these deals. I wanted it to be something that I vetted, I believed in, I was fully aligned with. But it meant that we were limited to a number of deals we could do. And we began to have such amazing deal flow. And I had my fourth child a year ago from last Saturday. So I was just tapped out. There was no way I could keep doing it and be able to scale it up like I knew it deserved to be. And I couldn't, I capped out. Like we could only keep doing what we were currently doing because I wasn't making cash flow off of it. So it's not like I could collapse, my engineering business or my strategy consulting business to be able to focus on this full time. And so I had invested in Cherub in November, and because I really loved the platform, I loved the opportunity to have this marketplace up, investment deals. And like I said, if that would have been there when I would, started my journey, it would have changed my trajectory in such a positive way. And so I really believed in the mission. I love Jacqueline and I love Angeline. Angeline's a product whiz. And so I was just really impressed by them and the team and the opportunity and the timing. And in February, I had this moment of just like, I can't do this how I want to do this. Like, I can't do it by myself how I want to do it. And I don't feel like I'm servicing the investors how I pictured I really wanted to. So I pitched it to Jack and Ange to, join forces and build something bigger and better together. And I think at the same time, they had heard from a lot of their investor community that they wanted smaller allocations available for these deals. A lot of them are early investors that wanted to dip their toe in. And so bringing on an SPV, an expert, I'm giving air quotes, that not an expert at anything, but an SPV expert made a lot of sense, as well as our community and everything. So it just was the right time, kind of aligned and accelerated pretty quick, except for, attorneys going back and forth. And then we were able to launch in July and really like honing in and defining what our product is and how we want to, service the market. And I think starting to find our footing there and be able to like launch something that's a little bit scalable and can really provide value to both founders and investors. So I'm excited.
It's exciting, Alyssa. Congratulations. I mean, I think this also like what an incredible personal pivot to go, okay, this isn't scalable. Let me go to something that is scalable and let me sort of work towards something that's a much bigger vision, like what more can be created here. And so as far as what's coming down the pipeline for Cherub and the areas that you're most excited about sort of bringing to market, can you give us any sneak peeks into some of the things that you're most passionate about right now?
I love the founder end of it and like helping them build these SPVs and collect these smaller checks. I don't know if it's something that like the market really knows and understands. And in a lot of cases, the founders can do this themselves and just need network to be able to like really support, amplify it. So building, a program around that to help these founders bring in these checks, especially in the early stages, especially when the capital markets are as locked up as they currently are. That's something I'm super passionate about, but I'm going to always be the most passionate on the investor side and helping women and men, of course, really build out micro funds and really get diversified. And our, Cherub, at Cherub, we're offering SPVs with no management fees and no carries, which is only unheard of. Yeah. So we're flipping the equation upside down to really give the full benefit to the investor and make sure we're aligned with the investor on incentivizing them. And, for me, it was like, I want them to have this really positive interaction with venture. And I don't want them to exit and lose 20%, and hurt their ROI. Like I want them to be successful and really be able to feed this LP network that we were talking about earlier. And so that was one of the really big unlocks that I was able to do at Cherub. So I'm excited about that feature and really educating investors if they're interested in being a venture investor. Like I think it's something that not just the old white dudes can do.
I love that. It's also incredible that you have such young children right now who get a chance to sort of also grow up and see you, navigating and creating change and impact in the world and really living by your own values. And, Alyssa, we're living just so much longer these days, right? It's like people these days are living to 105, 110. That would put you at like a newborn. And so when we think about the impact and legacy and sort of what it is that you are looking to leave on this planet, if you were to look backwards from a young age of 105, what is it you hope to create on this planet? What is the impact you'd like to have?
God, it's such a big question to unpack. I think it's making this accessible to people. I think it's making wealth accessible to future generations. I think it's opening the conversation so that when kids are coming out of college, it's not just I'm going into the stock market, but it's like, hey, I have some high risk funds that are here and I want to make this investment, and really building wealth from a young age. Because I think a lot of us don't start thinking about building wealth until we're like in our 40s and have children and think about like what we're handing down to them in our retirement and things like that. So like moving the conversation up earlier, I think is really important. I want to empower my kids to go be what they want to be and do what they want to do. And life 105 would be great, but life can also be painstakingly short. And, for me, it's like you only get today. Like today's the only guarantee. So being happy when you're with what you're doing and how you're doing and the impact that you're leaving on the world, I think teaching them that's like vital for me.
Oh, that's so beautiful. So my final two questions, my love, one of the last is, we talked a lot about investing money, saving money, diversification of portfolios. all of that so important. We want to make sure everyone sees that there are so many different ways to do this. But money is also really fun and it's exciting, and we get to do and buy and have fun lives because we get to spend it. What are some of your favorite ways of spending your cash?
You're going to hate me for this. It's venture investing. It's like, that is my life. That is my friends. Don't buy me a handbag. Don't buy me a nice car. Let me invest in a freaking company. Like, I've never been a spending spree girl. Like, probably the thing we spend the most on is family vacations. And like, I like to stay in nice places and do nice things with my kid and make those memories. But like, yeah, it's venture investing. I love investing in businesses. I love being a part of their success. I love connecting them. And like, that is my fun. It's
beautiful.
lame. So
No, it's not lame. I think it's really exciting. It's really like, it's beautiful. I mean, I so appreciate that. And I love that, Alyssa. And then my last question is, everyone who listens to the show is a powerful woman who's figured something out, and they're here to learn more and evangelize the platforms of the women who are up to big stuff like you. You, my love, are up to big stuff. What can the audience do to support you? What do you need right now? What are you calling in? How do we bring your dreams faster and closer to you than ever before?
Well, we were talking about this before, and I think there's like a couple things here. But first, I'm always looking to learn more too. And so I love the idea of getting deal flow that's diversified even across ventures. So if anyone has real estate investments or cash flowing businesses or anything like that, and I know we were talking about this before, but it is truly something like I just don't have access to. I know the deals are out there, but it's definitely the next wave of what I'm interested in finding. It's what I want my retirement plan to be. And so I think, anybody who has access to that, like I have access to venture, like let's do some trades. But if you're looking for venture investing or for some of my platforms, investwithcherub.com is the Cherub resource that we were talking about. You can find me on Instagram. I was on a panel and I was like, I think it's with Alyssa.Arnold. I think I'm really bad at those things. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm super approachable and I love meeting new people. So would be honored. Yeah. Other than that, find me there. And then I'll see if you need something else.
Wonderful. You are a light. I am so excited that we got to have this conversation. Thank you for taking us back to the early days of little Alyssa and then up to 105-year-old old Alyssa. I feel like we went through lifetimes in a short conversation together. I'm grateful for your friendship and thank you for being here today.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Getting Rich Together. Please take a minute to subscribe. And if you like this episode, I'd love it if you could share it with a friend who is ready to elevate their financial future. Until next time, let's keep getting rich together.